I'm John. I'm lucky to be here. We're lucky to get to be here. Here's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what's the difference between a good company and a legendary company. And I think just like a sports team, it's the ability to win, to maintain competitive advantage over a long period of time. So my job today is this, is to give you at least 10 tools, 10 things that you can do to help build a legendary business, one that maintains competitive advantage over a long period of time. Does that sound good? So let's start with the harsh reality. The harsh reality of winning companies and their ability to maintain competitive advantage, to innovate, to transform. And it's horrible. It's just horrible. There's lots of measures of this, the fade rate, the disruption of the Fortune 500 list. But here's a survey that McKinsey does that I think tells the story. They interview over 1,000 executives, and they ask, what's your number one priority this year? Over 80% say innovation is our top priority, but only 6% are satisfied with the result. That's interesting. But what's more interesting is that they've done that survey for over 20 years, and the results are the same every single time. Innovation, transformation, growth, our number one priority, but we're disappointed with the results, but they're going to do it again and again and again. Why? Why, after all we know about why transformation, innovation, growth is vital, why is it so hard for established companies to do it? I think it comes down to a few very human biases and traits. The ones that I think about are incrementalism. Incrementalism is the normal orientation that once we have something figured out, all we do is make little adjustments to it. We don't rethink it. The second is short-termism. Short-termism, both personally and business, is real, and that is the natural orientation to prioritize short-term benefits even when we know it costs us long-term upside. And the last is this, from the Oracle of Omaha, the ABCs of corporate decay: arrogance, bureaucracy, complacency. This is what sinks great companies and makes them average. So the enemy is not competition, the enemy is not AI, the enemy is not government interference. The enemy is within, and I call it complacency. I think most of us think that this topic of digital disruption is kind of this past and historic topic, right? We think of the classic cases of Blockbuster and Xerox and IBM, companies that literally invented the technologies of today but failed to capitalize on it. But I'm here to tell you that disruption is happening more now than ever. Listen to this set of gold standard brands that are well past their heyday and are struggling to create a new competitive advantage. Listen to this set: Intel, Boeing, Nike, Starbucks, all of these gold standard companies. So this happens today. Howard Schultz, the longtime CEO and founder of Starbucks, recently gave a clinical diagnosis. And this applies at big companies, small companies, any type of company that is having success. And here's Howard's clinical diagnosis of what happened at Starbucks. And I'm going to quote him, so I want to read this. They lose the ability to be on offense. And the worst thing that a company can do, like a sports team, is start playing defense because you're afraid to fail. That is a disease, not unlike another disease that has happened at Starbucks, which is hubris. There's a few companies, a few leaders out there, though, that have figured out a systematic way, a repeatable way of transforming an innovation. I call that playbook big bet leadership. Let's get into it. So first, what is a big bet? So a big bet gets called lots of things in a company or in a new venture. It gets called an investment. It gets called an AI strategy, a growth strategy, a product launch strategy, a large platform initiative. Those can all be big bets. But at its heart, a big bet has two key attributes. First is it has high ambition. It has the opportunity to create something new and important. But the second attribute is this. It has risks. It has unknown unknowns. It has dependencies that are far outside of our control. These are distinctly different than well understood incremental projects that we understand inherently well. They may have upside, but they don't have all the risks. So we need to approach these things differently. And every time you see a great company go to average, or an average company go to underperforming, there was a big bet that was needed but wasn't taken. Big bets are required. They are the only sustainable way to create new competitive advantages or to extend competitive advantages. McKinsey says this: incrementalism, just doing new little things, actually does not create differentiation. In fact, it gets in the way of actual innovation and transformation because it perpetuates that challenge. So that's a tricky value proposition I have for you, right? On one hand, I'm saying these things, the vast majority of them fail, but on the other hand, I'm saying we have to do them. It's how we actually create competitive advantage. But it gets worse. Big bets fail for many reasons. Here's a few of why they fail. We don't understand the real problem. We don't understand really how we're going to solve for it or what our value proposition is. We don't understand the real risks behind these. We approach it as primarily a technology initiative. Even though we know it's fundamentally a change and incentive issue, we approach it as a technology initiative. We don't make it a true priority. Did you know that the word priority did not have a plural version until 30 years ago? It's not priorities, it's priority. There's a lack of decision-making rights. We have poor strategic communication. We don't address incentives and many other reasons. So what we need is a new playbook. The whole goal of big bet leadership isn't to bet big. It's to think big and then test them out. So how do we actually do these things? So this is where this conversation gets a little bit complex. Try to stick with me, okay? So first, they ask 3 questions. What sucks? What sucks is the question that gets you to understand your customer extremely well. And instead of focusing on just the little pains and the little understanding we have, build deeper empathy and get to the real job that they are trying to do, the real problem that they are trying to get to. The second question, this one gets really complex, is WTF. WTF stands for, what's the future? When my wife asked me that question, that is not what she is asking me, right? What's the future is the prompt to have you specify the future of how something is going to operate. What is my customer going to love about your new product or your new service? But state it as a hypothesis because you don't know it for sure. WTF question mark. And the third is this, and I gave a little hint. Anybody have a guess? Come on. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Legends approach meaningful markets, markets where there is real juice to be squeezed, and they fundamentally understand that having a cost model advantage gives you advantages that others, even if they meet you on features, can't follow you on. So how do we actually build these habits? So I'm going to talk about some ways to build and use these habits. When we do these things, when we ask these 3 questions, what are we actually creating? We're creating a framework that's called the Big Bet Vector, right? The problem we are going to solve and our hypothesis about the future state is. I get asked to do a lot of kind of QA reviews or pressure tests of digital transformation initiatives, and I just ask essentially 2 questions. What's the problem we're solving? What's our hypothesis for the future state? And I'll interview people individually. A third won't be able to answer those 2 questions, and the other 2/3 don't just answer them differently, like they're very different answers. If you can create a big bet vector, then you can drive that across the life cycle of testing out your hypotheses and be an effective big bet legend. So, if you were to ask me, John, what is Amazon's innovation technique? It's called working backwards. And what this technique features is starting with the outcome, starting with the customer, and working backwards. And it features writing narratives. Now, we designed a specific set of memo templates for the job of creating something new, where it's a big bet, high ambition, high risk. Here's the 4 memos that you need to create. The first is called the What Sucks memo, right? This is what forces you to actually be able to articulate, here's my customer, and here's the thing that they really want to get done or that they're really frustrated with. People will pay when you remove pain. Remember that. The second memo, the WTF memo, right? This is also called the outcome definition memo. And what the outcome definition memo does is takes the what sucks and says, what's the killer feature that would solve this what sucks? And here's the secret, what are the 3 to 5 things that must be true in order to deliver that outcome? These are the things that have to be tested before we make big commitments. The next memo, the juice memo, also called the financial outcome memo. Instead of creating just a business case, this recognizes that creating a cost model advantage is a key way to create competitive advantage, and then we have to identify the couple of things that would have to be true to create a cost model advantage. And then the summary is this. It's called the future press release. And this is an announcement to a larger team. It's not an actual press release, but it's used to bring your stakeholders, your shareholders, your employees, your partners along, and you describe this is where we're going in visceral terms and why customers would love it. And then here's the hard things we have to do in order to create this journey. Writing is a superpower. Everything at Amazon, whether it's a proposal, a project, a correction of error, gets written and debated. This is how you actually create clarity of thinking. And if you can't write a memo about it, you are not ready to invest in it. You are not ready to go forward with it. This is a hard habit to create. But it actually, once you get into the habit of writing things out, you will be a better thinker and you will not operate in any other manner. So one of the habits of these big bet legends is they communicate in a very distinctive, strategic level, always talking about the customer and the pain and our hypothesis about where we're going. They are using the big bet vector. So here's the good news. We've done the hard work, right? We've written out our memos. We understand how, at effective levels, to talk about the what sucks in our hypothesis. But the job to be done is this. The job is to be a chief repeating officer. To repeat, repeat, repeat. Stories are 22 times more memorable than simple facts or figures. And people need to hear things time and time and time again. And if you create a strategic communication plan to bring your employees, your partners, your investors, your own family along with the journey, that is how you actually create change and help them understand the changes that are going to be happening here. So let's talk about guided wandering. So most of the times in business and life, because we're good operators, we see a problem, we see a situation, we can make a plan, we execute, and then we measure, right? That's the closed loop of how good operators work. But in big bets, it's more like guided wandering. It's not random. We have a belief as to what the future is, but it's difficult to put a timeline, a judgment on it. So I launched the Amazon Marketplace business in 2002. What people don't forget is where Amazon was at the time and the journey that it took. So just to remind people of what Amazon was in 2002, we had our first billion-dollar quarter in holiday 2002. Today, Amazon is a roughly $650 billion revenue company. We were being referred to as Amazon.con, Amazon.toast, Amazon.bomb, and my favorite, Amazon.org, because we obviously didn't know how to make money. We had tried 2 prior approaches to a third-party selling approach. We tried auctions, and we tried something called Z-shops. eBay was 3 times our size. But Bezos said, we're going to do it again. But all of his advisors, the board, his senior operators were like, Jeff, this isn't for us. We aren't going to be able to do this. But Jeff created a small pirate ship that I got to lead. We launched the marketplace business in late 2002, and it took over 7 years for that to actually really gain traction. And it wasn't until we added 2 other big bets to the equation. One was Prime, the world's best loyalty program ever, and something called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. Those weren't on our roadmap, but this is what big discoveries typically take, is guided wandering. And you have to have strategic patience while having tactical impatience. Get the things done today that you can get done. Get experimenting, but understand that the journey is somewhat unpredictable. So I'm going to end with this. So this is the creation of Adam by Michelangelo, who's a 15th century artist, Renaissance man. And he said this. He said, the greater risk is not that we aim too high and miss our mark, but that we aim too low and that we hit it. And what I hope you do is you understand how to create a big vision, an ambitious vision, but to actually test out the high-risk, high-value things that must be true early so that you can be systematic about doing that. So I, again, hope that you put Big Bet Leadership to work for you in whatever endeavor you're at, whatever stage of company you're at, and understand the guided wandering journey that major transformation takes. And with that, I want to say thank you very much.